Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Break the Rules. I'm your host, Lev Polyakov, and we are here today with two very special guests, returning champion Will Chamberlain over here, and we have Vladislav Heraskevych, who is a three-time Olympian. Unfortunately, the Olympic Committee got rid of his opportunity to do a very important thing, which is to showcase his support for his fallen athletes who were fighting for Ukraine against the Russian invasion. And we want to discuss what exactly went on there with the commission, the hypocrisy of it all, but also having this be associated with the macrocosm, if you will, of geopolitics. What exactly are these countries doing today in this struggle that's currently, I think, forming very understandable size here, where on one hand you have the West, civilization, and on the other hand you have, I wouldn't say East, I would just say a complete degradation of this collective misery and jealousy. And I don't really know the words here, but this is something that people have referred to nowadays as a third worldism, where we have, Iran, Russia, you would have other countries in the global south. And this whole idea here, China as well, this whole idea is that we want to make sure that we guard ourselves not just against a lot of these very left-leaning things that have weakened us over time, at least as I've been able to see them here in the West, but at the same time, not to get a wrong idea that I think a lot of the further right dissident people have had, unfortunately, these past couple of years, especially since the war started, where they were seeing Russia as this based trad place where Christians can have a refuge away from all this degeneracy. And I think right now what happened with Iran kind of really cemented these two sides, where we're seeing like Tucker and Candace Owens and a lot of these people, and of course, uniting with people like Alexander Dugin. Right now we have that stream going on with Dugin and Sneeko and the that Chinese professor fellow. So all of this, at least to me, shows that these sides are very much understandable. There's not going to be a question now of whose side you're on when it comes to whether you want this to be a unity of civilizations versus this kind of barbarism that we're seeing. So anyway, that's what I want to kind of start out with, the bedrock of this discussion. But I want to go to Vladislav right now. For those who do not know his story, Vlad, please tell us about what exactly transpired in these years since the war started, and what exactly went on with the Olympic Commission. And once again, everybody, make sure to smash that subscribe button, smash that like button, click the bell. All that is extremely important for the growth of this channel. Vlad, you've got the floor.
Yeah. So first of all, let's make a short introduction. I am a skeleton athlete. It's pretty exotic sport, and I think not many of people know about the existence of the sport. Much more people know about bobsleigh, about Cool Runnings film. So skeleton is almost the same thing, but we are doing the same runs on the same ice track, but on a belly, head first. So it could look pretty scary, but it's quite a cool sport. It's also pretty unique in many perspectives because it's a lot of engineering in the sport, a lot of pilot skills. So as in Formula One, let's say, and also of course physical shape, because you need to run fast to be fast at the finish line on a start. You need to be fast on the start to be fast on the finish. If we talk about me, and if we talk about beginning of full-scale war, for me it was also a life-changing moment, I think, as a for many Ukrainians. And we create a charity foundation. We start to work with abroad organizations, just try to support people in Ukraine. Mostly, like it was, not mostly, but it was humanitarian aid in all of the cases. So we try to support our country in the best possible way. It's also more discussion about like what sport can give us. And for me, like sport is a lot of connections. Sport, in my opinion, can bring peace. And we try to do it. So we try to bring support to people in Ukraine, and we try to save lives. If you talk about scandal and disqualification and all of that, what happened just on this latest Olympic Games. First of all, I want also make a clarification. It was not just people who was defending our country on the front line on the helmet. It was also among of these people was a lot of kids, and some of people I knew in person. They were my teammates from Youth Olympic Games in 2016. With some of them, we were delivering supplies together to Kyiv district, to Kyiv region. But a lot of people on the helmet, it was kids who was killed by Russian shellings in the east of Ukraine. For me, idea was to bring them with me on Olympic Games because in some moment of their lives it was a dream. And as many, I think for many athletes in among very different sports, Olympic Games is a big dream, and it's quite a huge goal to be there. And for me, it was a moment just to bring them with me. And also to support their families because it's quite hard time for them, and for them, I think they also get some joy from just understanding that their kids are not forgotten. And for me, it was a main goal. What we had next, we had warnings from IOC that this helmet is not allowed, but suddenly without any explanation. And it was more situations that we have a power and you don't have it, so you shouldn't wear this helmet. And that's what we had. And it led us to competition day when we had this straight discussion with head of IOC, with Mrs. Coventry, when she took, I would say, final decision and disqualify me from my Olympic Games.
And also, I read that you volunteered to fight in the war as well, but at that time the reserves were full.
Yeah, so when a full-scale war started, I was still a student. So basically, I don't have any military background, any military experience. And as I told you before, like we create charity foundation, so when I understand that it's no opportunity to go voluntarily like on the front line, then yeah, we create a charity foundation. And I think since that moment, I understand that we can do more because not so many people had the opportunity to work with foreign organizations and to bring, I would say, support as we can do it in our place. So since 2022, we were able to collect some fundraisers with U.S. organization Ukrainian Aid Operations and to bring some Alaska tents to make like it's called fast, like not fast surgery, but to stabilize people. Yeah, when they get injured and they need to get to the hospital, so you have this point where you can do fast surgeries that they can do it to the hospital. So then we bring a lot of support for Ukrainian sports, and again, like you may hear a lot of things like sport is out of politics, but it obviously doesn't work in Ukraine because sport facilities are being destroyed and athletes being killed in the same way as all other members of our society. So we try to bring support to Ukrainian sports, to the kids. We also have now much bigger team in skeleton sport because of some kids. We met them on the charity trainings and now they're part of our team. Also, we work a lot with veterans. So I would say like now in this position, we can literally do more. And it's, of course, now because of all of the attention and because of what we have now and attention, I was able to be in United Nations like 2 weeks ago in headquarters. I was able to be in Brussels 1 week ago. So we are able to talk about Ukraine, to spread information what's going on in Ukraine, because it's also a problem as I see it now. Many people abroad doesn't know that war is still going on in Ukraine. And I think for me, like as for Ukrainian, it's very painful to understand. But with that, I'm also know that my mission now is very important, like just to try to support my country in this time and also to talk about what's going on in Ukraine.
Now, Will, I want to make sure that we have the opportunity for you to ask Vlad any questions you have regarding the sports world as well as the broader political undertones going on here. But also, it's interesting, your name, Will Chamberlain. I looked up, that is the name of a famous basketball star as well.
Almost. One letter off, yeah.
One letter off. So there is a bit of a connection there. But Will, when it comes to what Vlad was talking about right now, I don't know like how deep other than the name connection you are into the sports world, but please let me know anything on your mind right now.
Well, I mean, first off, skeleton's intense. I know what skeleton is. I watched it during the Winter Olympics. I'm very impressed by anybody who does that. That's a crazy sport to do. So, more remarkably impressive. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't have too many specific interesting thoughts about the relationship between, I'm a politics guy, so I'm kind of focused on, the questions about Russia and Iran. In particular, I think there's an interesting shift. Lev, you kind of highlighted it at the beginning, which is there was this time maybe 2 to 3 years ago, or even in the first year of the Trump administration, where I think Trump Republicans were extremely skeptical of Ukraine, extremely skeptical. And I don't think the Ukrainian government was doing itself any favors. I still remember things like Zelensky showing up to the White House in a tracksuit or whatever he normally wears. And there are a lot of little things. And I think perhaps the Ukrainians didn't fully grasp that we still had some lingering annoyance about what we felt was Ukrainian meddling in previous elections, right? Whereas, working with the Democrats because for whatever reason, they thought the Republicans would inexorably be hostile. But in the last 6 months, I think there's been something serious that's changed. I think it's not just it's a combination of you have this kind of new faction of people who are trying to become angry and stir up animosity towards the president from the right, and those people are very much aligned with like this kind of pro-Russian crap. So this is what you have. This example, what Lev described is like Dugin doing a live stream with Sneeko and the idiot Chinese professor. Tucker, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Dugin promoting all these people who are hostile to the president. And there's also, I think, another interesting thing is that, President Trump in that first year in office really made a very, very aggressive effort to try and get to a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. He had the summit with Putin in Alaska, sent Witkoff to negotiate repeatedly with the Russians. And nothing came of that. And I think that sort of disproved a Republican thesis of the war that had existed during Biden, which was a good chunk of why this war happened was poor diplomacy by the Biden administration, really aggressive escalatory diplomacy. And if we had someone who came in with a more even-handed approach, we might get a resolution to this. And that clearly is not true, right? Like Trump came in with a more even-handed approach, willing to make concessions. Nothing has occurred. And then finally, it seems like, I don't know, I saw an interesting 60 Minutes bit about how Ukraine has really stabilized the front with drone warfare, and they've been really effective. So the combination of, I think, you asked me maybe 18 months ago, I would have been much more skeptical. I think, Lev, you had me on with a couple of advocates, and I was pretty skeptical. I'm coming more and more around to the idea that actually, why don't we just win this war? Apparently, Russia can't really win it, and we've given them plenty of chances to have an off-ramp. So maybe we should help the people who, are clearly more aligned with us and aren't helping helping fund the Iranians and striking our ships, stuff like that. So I think, Lev, you were right that it sort of crystallized what's clear. And obviously, I'm curious. Maybe I've missed a little bit, Vladislav, of your description of, exactly what your involvement has been in the military. But I'm curious about your specific involvement and or whatever about friends who've been involved. I mean, I would, do athletes get an exception from service? How exactly does that work? Would be an interesting question, right?
Yeah, so some small percent of athletes have an exception who is a national team members, and I think it makes sense, like in terms of if you don't have our presence in international sport, if you don't have our presence in the art, then you have in Biennale, let's say, you have just a Russian exhibition, so no Ukrainian exhibition. Mm-hmm. If you are not in sport, then just Russian in the sport. And as you see it right now, IC really plays alongside with Russia, with Belarus. And then you also don't have presence of Ukraine. And now you became more and more forgotten. And I think in this time, we could also agree that all of us, that Ukraine cannot win this war alone, and we need support. We need to talk about us. We need to be there, and I think it's important. So we have this for national team members. They had some, I would say, you can have some time off, I would say, an opportunity, in time when you. But again, you saw my helmet, so it's still a lot of athletes, and they're being killed. And it's just a small fracture. So more than, I think, around 700 athletes already been killed.
Wow. Okay.
Ukrainian athletes been killed. So it's not that athletes are not fighting in the front line. They're fighting, but not all. At the same time, I want to also add some fun facts. So you saw Dugin today. And also interesting fact that why we have Olympics in Italy. why this track was built, it was also because of one of the friends of Dugin. You may know Salvini, I think, if you're a politician,
Yes.
and you definitely know Salvini, and he was in pretty close relationship
Oh,
with
Salvini.
Salvini,
Okay,
Italian
yeah.
one, Matteo Salvini. So he was, and I don't know, I think he is a close friend of Dugin. And he was the main reason why they built this track, because normally like this track should be moved to maybe even to US. So it was Lake Placid was in the discussion. So maybe we would have this Olympics in Lake Placid, but it was staying in Italy because of Salvini. So basically, like, yeah, but just a fun fact that everything is pretty connected. So my perspective and what I also try to do, like since beginning of full-scale war, we try to show and expose like how Russian sport is being involved in the war, because like when you watch on some situation from different angles, you may see like some new things. And my goal like is to watch it from sport perspective, like what they're doing in the sport, what signs do you have in the sport, like what directions they're trying to move in. Yeah, because sport is like more, I would say, narrative things. They try to push some narrative from like very far away. It was let's say, for example, like Sochi Olympic Games. Yeah, when firstly when we have occupation of Crimea, of east of Ukraine, Donbass, it became like just right after Olympic Games. Also, some military action in Georgia was started by Russia in times of Summer Olympic Games in Beijing in 2008. Full-scale war started in 2022, just right after Olympic Games in Beijing. So I would say Russia likes to use these big events, big world events, especially with the great, I would say, Olympic values background. When you have this like friendship, united, and then attacking. So yeah, and then image is like kind of increased at the time, and then they're attacking, and it's not. I think it's also a reason why we don't have such a huge world reaction in 2014. It was because of Olympic Games in Sochi on the occupation of Crimea. I mean. And so since 2022, we try to see a lot of things. And you told already that it's really hard to negotiate. Yeah, it's peaceful talks is lead to nothing. And for me, it was like pretty obvious, because since our start of 2022, we're monitoring a lot of things. And one of the things which really was shocking for me, it's Youth Army. So Russia had this movement, Youth Army. It was led by Russian athletes, and they literally like have kids like 10, 12 years old, 14 years old, small kids, and they doing some exhibitions as say exhibition fights of the World War II, or like exhibition fights, and like they really like putting this war narrative to the kids. And they doing this narrative. I don't know if you know this kids camp. It's called Artek. It was very famous in Soviet Union, one of the like most famous in the world. Because I was there a couple of times. It was even a couple of American kids there, like, and it's like it's Ukrainian Russian language was there. It was in Crimea, and it's still in Crimea, so now it's occupied. So they have even these exhibitions in this like kids kids areas, like, and it's quite crazy, like if you think about it. And for me, it was always a question why they should do it if they doesn't want to have a war in the future. And also after World War II, I think for everyone it was under like clear understanding that war is really a bad thing. In Ukraine, it was always like never again, because it's a disaster. In Russia was like it's. I think you also can monitor it. It was like we can repeat it. So it was their narrative. So basically, like it's a country which like it really focused on warfare, like, and it's for me it was obvious that these negotiations will lead to nothing concrete, because yeah. So
I kind of want to
because
follow
we
up on this
yeah.
on this question. So, one of the things I saw in the 60 Minutes episode, and I mean, again, Ukraine, Russia is not my primary area of expertise, so I'm kind of asking this as like a layperson, effectively. But it seems like there's a few things that one, the lines are pretty static in the sense that the front lines of the war are not moving very much at all, and it's been that way for 2 years. What, 2 years now, something like that?
4 years.
4 years, geez,
yeah.
Man, I forget how long this has been going on. And what I read also is that if anything, Ukraine is getting more and more efficient in terms of its ability to kill Russian soldiers with drones and whatever. Like essentially, they're basically, Russia's having to play more and more of a blood cost just to keep going in the war. Why do you guys think? Given that, this seems like a situation where, if the United States wants a peace deal, Russia should want a peace deal too. At this point, is my point. Like if Russia were being run rationally, it does not make sense to continue the war. Like there's no reason to think you're going to gain any more. If the trends are going in the wrong direction, you're losing lots of people. Eventually, you're just going to run out of your of the age cohort that could serve properly. So, what's the Russian strategy here at this point? Like, is it just they feel like that maybe Putin feels like so many people have died that in order to maintain his political legitimacy, he has to bring home a victory, and so he has to keep going? Or is there something? I mean, and this is for both Vladislav and Lev. I'm curious, like, what do you guys think is keeping the war going?
I can start.
Go ahead with that. Yeah.
No, I think in my opinion, it's a problem of dictatorship of Putin. So he is in the power for a long time, and only way to keep his power is to do war. And I believe even if we have let's say peace some way, like peaceful deal today, then tomorrow he will attack Baltic countries. That's what I believe. Like because Russia is trying to keep his power. And in 2013-14, if you remember, it was also, I think, killing of Nemtsov. So it was kind of a strong opposition to Putin, and then war started. Yes. So when Putin government and Putin himself like fear about his place as a president, then they start war, and like then you can do nothing. It's dictatorship, and I think it's a real problem.
When it comes to the strategy of somebody who is focused on preserving their own life as long as possible, like Putin, I definitely agree with Vlad. But as far as what the long-term potentialities here are for Russia, I still think that a lot of them are looking as America as being some kind of a Hail Mary situation with Trump, where they see, well, Trump puts up a photo of him with Putin, and maybe certain people within Silicon Valley are invested in Russia winning this war through, bringing this back a little bit to the sports world. Beyond just the physical activity of the sporting events, the sports world is also an opportunity, much like maybe the Colosseum was back in the Roman Empire days, for elites to mingle. And within this context, I've seen a lot of people who I would say are allegedly Russian agents that have infiltrated these various networks. For instance, I recently made a post that's becoming kind of big right now on X, calling out that Anna and Dasha of Red Scare, I don't know, Vlad, you know who they are allegedly working for the Russian interests when it comes to certain little things, like, for example, in 2018, they were saying that the government of Ukraine is run by Nazis. So this was, long before 2022, this was cementing this environment of, well, obviously, there's all these Nazis in Ukraine. And next thing you know, in 22, that's exactly what Putin ends up saying. And that's exactly what so many of these dimwit podcasting people end up going along with. You have, for instance, somebody like Lex Friedman, who I've said multiple times, in a conversation that was blown the whistle on by my friend Ben Avery, who was there physically present with Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan, and Tim Dillon. Lex Friedman could not stop lauding how wonderful Vladimir Putin was in private to Joe Rogan. And then Joe Rogan was referencing some program he saw from Russian TV, talking about some propaganda on the Joe Rogan Experience. So we could see these nodes of people within Silicon Valley, people within the elites, as well as the podcasters that have this very populistic fervor that they could activate, which would force more, like on the local level, politicians to not be as favorable towards Ukraine if so many of the people that are listening to these podcasters would, I guess, in the mind of the Russians, put pressure on them. And
I want to like just clarify this. Sure. So the idea here is that they're sort of hoping, because I see Iran doing some of this too, right? Yeah. Which is they're sort of like, well, we can't win the real war, but what if we win the PR war big time and then essentially force the United States to change its policy? That's and that's like their Hail Mary, right? They're actually losing the war on the ground. They're hoping we can, get a reversal based on PR.
And it's not just populistic pressure. I think it's also people like Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, who, as we all know, has been very favorable towards the Russian Federation as well as Iran. Like this is a very dangerous situation, which is kind of reminiscent of FDR's administration, where FDR had a lot of these communist agents that were in there. In which case, I think it's right that we had the McCarthy hearings and all that. Funny enough, though, Joseph McCarthy's guy, what's his name, Roy Cohn, who worked for McCarthy, he was the mentor of a young Donald Trump, back in the day in New York City. But as far as where Trump's head is in regards to Putin and Russia, like I still don't know. It's very weird. Like
I think that's where I feel like I get Trump, right? I think Trump is the guy who Trump likes to make deals, right? Trump looked at Russia, Ukraine, and was like, I should make a deal here. This war is stupid. I can come in and make a deal. And you think about other places where he's sort of done this, like Azerbaijan, Armenia is a really good example of that, which is talk about an intractable conflict. I guess Vladislav would know just as much about anybody about that. But I mean, intractable conflict for decades, tons of people dying, not getting anywhere. And Trump comes in and is like, we're going to make a peace deal here, and just makes it happen. And so I think he looked at Russia, Ukraine kind of similarly. Like he thought bad diplomacy from the Democrats had led to a hardening of positions. If he comes in with his unique force of personality, he can break the logjam and make a peace deal happen. But then it didn't, right? He rolled out the red carpet for Putin in Alaska. I mean, he wasn't like a wuss to him, but he was trying to like, okay, like I'm taking you seriously. Like, come on, let's be reasonable, and I'll be reasonable with you. And then nothing happened, and it just got worse. And I think that's the way to get on Trump's bad side, is to like take the diplomatic, when he holds out the hand to say, I'm serious, and then you kind of brush him off, or you blow him off, like that really angers him. And so I think pretty quickly after that, you saw American aid escalate to Ukraine. I think, or he reaffirmed it or something. And so that doesn't mean that Trump isn't, if Putin finally comes back and is like, okay, I want to be reasonable now, that Trump wouldn't listen, and there wouldn't be pretty serious negotiations. I think Trump wants an end to the war, and is willing to force Ukraine to make some territorial concessions on that front. Like that's just, he wants an end to the war. He doesn't think it's in America's interest for the war to continue. But as long as Putin's not going to do that, he's not happy with Putin. And so he knows he's going to help out the Ukrainians ever more. And moreover, the other thing about Trump, and Trump is very, people hate on Trump and call him stupid. This guy was a billionaire real estate magnate for 40 years in New York City. You don't do that successfully without being very good at negotiating and very good at sensing when you have leverage and when you don't. I think Trump understands more and more that he has the leverage in Russia. Like, think about things like Russia just not being able to do anything meaningful for Iran when the United States struck. Like, they can't send any military assets back because they need everything they have for the Ukrainian front. Like, basically, I think Lavrov put out a statement like, we support you diplomatically to Iran, when their entire leadership class.
That's in the beginning, but they have been, to be fair, sending weaponry to Iran right now. Hopefully, this blocking of the Strait of Hormuz will put the kibosh on that, kind of to your point. But Vlad, I'm curious what you think about the situation in regards to Donald Trump, as well as, if it's possible, could you take us back a little bit in time to when the war first started? What were your views of Donald Trump and America in general, as far as what they could do here with Ukraine? Were you hopeful? Were you pessimistic?
So first of all, I want to run back a little bit to Iran situation, because I also, in the last 2 weeks, I was in the United Nations, like I already told you, it was event, Change the World. So we have the panel discussion with a lot of thousands of students. And one of the members of the panel discussion was Shiva. So she was a football player, and now she's a football coach. She is from Iran, so she's a refugee from Iran. And also for me, it was really interesting to hear her story, because she's kind of victim of the regime of Iran. And latest weeks is crazy. Young couples being executed and in Iran just because of their position. So it's inhuman. And I believe Russian regime and 45,000 people being just killed because of their political view. It's just insane. And I think definitely this regime shouldn't have such a huge military potential as they had it, because it's the terrorists. So I believe we should also protect democracy and free world, and it's very important. If you talk about Trump, and I knew him from my childhood, because I was always as a kid we had this US programs, WWE and all of that stuff, So definitely I knew him from Home Alone movie, So more of a businessman, yeah, and definitely he looks for me. He seems like as a deal maker, and also to see him like as a president of the country, it was quite unique, because I think before he became a president, he doesn't have any political experience. Yeah, so he was. And I think also way of communication, it was something unique. So you don't have this like prepared statements from the paper, like when nobody understand nothing. So it was pretty like more natural way of speaking, and I think it's what people liked in the first term when he was elected. And I believe he pointed out on many like I would say interesting problems, like what you didn't like really see solving. Yeah, and yeah, latest. I think when full-scale war started, I didn't really think about Trump, because I mean, like, it's not my field of work. I'm still I'm not a political person. Like, I'm an athlete. But for me, it was interesting just to see what he can do. But obviously, he wasn't in charge. Yeah, so it was Democracy Party, and we had another U.S. president. But I would say we had very high expectations when he became elected secondly, because he promised that yeah, he will do everything as possible to finish this war as fast as possible. And for us, of course, like we also people, and we are tired of the war. So now I'm in Kiev, and we always have these problems with light now because of blackouts. We have problems with water supply. So now we will have a huge project just to support our science, because our institutions are being attacked also. And so simple things. Yeah, we have a school, very talented kids who is medalist in Olympiads, science Olympiads. They don't have enough light to do labs. We have faculty of physics, so like I think it's important institution, yeah, and it's not only important for Ukraine, because science is like pretty unique, yeah. Like if you have this project in science, then you can develop something worldwide, and that's how we have like evolution as a humanity. But now this institution also doesn't work because winter was cold, our power plants and water supplies were attacked, and then they have tubes blown up, and now faculty is not working. So we have these problems in of course we are tired, and like it's for 4 years, like it's crazy amount of time if you think about it.
Yeah.
And definitely we need also we want to finish this war as soon as possible, but of course also we need to have some guarantees, I think, as a country, that we will not have it in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years start it again. So we need to understand that we can proceed with our normal life and be safe. And I think it's main problem for Ukrainians, because they really don't trust Russia at this point.
And do they trust the peacekeeping forces that have been proposed? Because one of the big issues that I've had with any of these peace deals, like the one that was offered in Turkey, this was I think it was 2023, and there was this guy who I'm sure you know, Vladislav. I don't know if you know him well. His name is Alexei Arestovich. Vlad, you're familiar with him,
Sounds
right?
somewhat familiar, but I don't know who that is.
How would you describe him? He's like this politician who was before like some a thinker of sorts, some pundit. I don't know, but he had an interview that he did with Michael Fagan, who was a well-known journalist there in Ukraine, and he was talking about how this peace deal made him almost fall out of the chair laughing, because it involved completely castrating the entirety of the Ukrainian army, leaving like a pathetic amount of people, left behind to defend. That was part of the peace deal. And lo and behold, we had publications like Unheard, for instance, that was then championing Arestovich when he was saying the complete opposite of what he was saying, in Russian to these naive Western audiences, talking about how, we had this great opportunity with this peace deal. So again, this is like the soft power influence that I was alluding to earlier. But when it comes to going against this now and having something where it's not going to be in anybody's question of, well, Ukraine is not going to be able to defend this demilitarized zone, what exactly would be your preference, Vladislav, for what this looks like, what is willing to be given up? Or is it the case that nothing could be given up, where whatever is given up, it'll just give Russia enough time to solidify things in that area before proceeding onwards?
So first of all, let's Arestovich. I don't want to talk a lot about him. So it's kind of a guy like he had his spotlight in when the full-scale war started. He was really effective in a position like to calm society. So he was understanding how to talk. But I mean, then what came after, like I don't know, some personal like disagreements or something like that. So he started to work on Russia, like, and it's obviously like, or he was I would say drafted when he ran away from Ukraine, or how it goes. But definitely you see him as a like voice of Russia, like right now. So I wouldn't take him as seriously. Also, you know, like in my life, I try also like if people you know change position too often, then you don't really they don't have a credit. So for me, he doesn't have any credit, so I don't really watching him or listen him. So his opinion is not something, you know, important for me. So if you talk about peace deal, these discussions, I think main problem like everyone is talking about land and that we should give up land, but main problem I think for Ukraine is people on this land. So what we should do about these people. And also we already had this kind of local elections in Donetsk, in Lugansk, but again like it's was done by Russian government. So could we trust to this election, to these votings or not? And it's really like I'm not in a position like to say like what we are ready to give up, because it's not about me, it's about other people on this land, about Ukrainians and about country itself. But definitely most important thing, as I believe, it's peace guarantees that we don't have this war started again like in 5 or 10 years. And I also believe that it's important that we try to live our life with international law. So if it's violated and if you allowed it to do to Russia, then you have Iran who will do it. Then you have in other countries who will do it once again and once again. And then we have a chaotic world, and then we have wars all over the world. So I think it's a main problem that we should keep going with international law, and we should try to keep our world safe. And I believe that we should be concentrated on Artemis 2, like it's amazing mission. Yes, so now we have another problems, and we have a lot of problems like without wars. But now whole world is concentrated on a war, and nobody is watching what's going on. Like Artemis 2 is now, I think, yeah, it's like in the last 40 years, like it's amazing mission. Yeah, why I'm talking about it. I'm a physicist, like out of the sport. I'm a physicist, so
not surprises there. By the way, we have Klitschko, who's a boxer and also is a what was he, like a mathematics, right? So yeah, this is kind of like par for the course. I think the combination of strength and brains in one.
Yeah, so for me, like it's really interesting, and I understand that it makes a huge difference in future. Yeah, and this mission is very important. I think it's the first mission since 70s. Yeah, so it's such a huge moment, but people not talking about it. Yeah, so it's like was just one day news, and now everybody is like forgets that it's happened, and now everyone is talking about again Iran war, like we're talking about Russia-Ukraine invasion. It's I think it's not right way, like, and not right direction to move on, like, and that's my I think biggest problem right now. But again, like if you talk about again like coming back to peaceful negotiations, I believe it's peaceful guarantees. That's what's more important and most important part.
Well, that leads me to a question for both of you guys. If we're talking about the peaceful guarantees, we've seen how successful Ukraine's been, not just in terms of fighting this war, against these odds, but if we're talking about what's going on in Iran right now, where these Middle Eastern oil-rich countries are now working together with the Ukrainian government to make these drones in order to defend them, then the question is, how much, other than the Ukrainian armed forces and the United States, how much do we have organizations of any kind of quality? Like, sure, you have special forces in various European, Western European countries, but at the same time, as far as their military apparatus goes, as well as how much the politicians in Europe are willing to use that military apparatus. We've seen what happened right now with Iran, where a lot of these European countries, especially Spain, they don't want the United States to use a military basis in order to facilitate this. So my concern is that if we're talking about any kind of guarantees, what if the guarantors of these guarantees are so low level in comparison to the power of the Ukrainian military, that is it even worth anything? And that's also not just in terms of the military capability of these European countries, but also in terms of whether these countries would keep their word and not just become a bunch of cowards when it comes to Russia's incursion into Europe.
Yeah, well, we don't see any of it. I mean, at this point, after how the Europeans have behaved in vis-a-vis our strikes on Iran, we don't think those European alliances are worth the paper they're printed on. And you aren't seeing immediate impacts from that, but it's going to change the way that America views countries like Spain. I mean, I think you're already seeing a little bit of this where we're basically saying, oh, we can't use our bases for our strikes. That these are bases we fund, we maintain, we have military plans for, and you're saying we can't use them. We can't fly over your countries if we're flying to Iran. Okay, so you guys want to be neutral. That's what that sounds like to me. That doesn't sound like allied. That sounds like pure neutrality. Like you want to be Switzerland. Like, okay, you can be Switzerland. That's fine. But you're no longer under our security umbrella, and we're not going to take you guys seriously. And so, the interesting thing is you're almost seeing, because Ukraine is suddenly very useful to the Gulf countries because of Ukraine's expertise at combating drones, and the Americans are kind of more in line with the Gulf countries, that there's the alliances there are actually much more natural, where the Gulf countries are, one, a little more capable of defending themselves, and then two, also trying to create really massive investment in the United States to create these mutual reliances, that you might end up seeing a sort of alliance system where we kind of bypass Europe as though they're just not really relevant to the question anymore. And it's like, but Ukraine is in. It's like Ukraine, Israel, the Gulf, and the United States, because we're all sort of combating the third worldist alliance. And if Europe wants to sit on the sidelines or virtue signal about how great Palestine is, well, then they can do that. But they should do that with words alone. I think there is really, it's remarkable to see people like Lindsey Graham talking about how NATO is stupid. That's a big sea change in how American politicians are talking about NATO. I think the Europeans have done real damage to their standing with America. I'm talking about like the Western European countries in particular, UK, Spain, France, Germany.
Yeah,
and I don't know how
not Poland.
Not
Poland, obviously, and
not Poland, and
yeah.
not Hungary, not the.
Well, I mean, with Hungary, we're going to get into Hungary as well. As
Hungary,
far as
you guys know, again, one of these things where I'm a little, I only have so many things I can pay deep attention to at any given time. So I know there's a Hungarian election, we got new guys in power, and but I think I will say that I think it's and it seems like the Ukrainians understand this, that they're not particularly impressed with the Europeans either at this point. And that they're looking more towards the Gulf for partnerships. They're looking towards the, and it just seems like there's a natural commonality of interest, and isn't, exactly how the war ends, if it ever does, I don't know, but there's a commonality of interest there, and the Western Europeans really seem like, we had this whole Greenland spat, and the whole point of the Western European countries was like, you don't need to own any property in Greenland, the United States, because you can always use our bases. We can always just give you permission. It's like, well, then if you're going to revoke our permission when we're striking a geopolitical adversary, maybe we do need to own those bases.
Before Vlad responds, I can't help but think that this is also part of Putin's plan in a way, much like we have the clown Pepe guy over here, Mr. Honkler, saying so, because there is this plan that Russia's had to divide America from NATO. And part of me wonders how much it goes all the way back to Putin, let's say, carpet bombing Syria and facilitating this migration of these Syrian refugees, a lot of them being military age men, into Europe, which created this fifth column within Europe, which also I think is partly one of the reasons why Europe's been very scared of helping out the United States, because they have these embedded Islamic fifth columnists that can strike at any point. So now I think Europe's kind of held hostage here. But I'm not really seeing, the rejection of Western Europe as, a good thing long term. These are still very important places that have their militaries. And not only that, but we also don't want Europe to get into the hands of China, as well as Canada. And that seems, as well as Canada getting into the hands of China. I don't know what exactly things look like when it comes to those relationships. But this is why, like, I wonder how exactly we can get ourselves out of this so that, number one, Ukraine is defended long term, but number two, so that these Western European nations don't get absorbed by China, even if they don't get absorbed by Russia. So I don't know, like, Vlad, what do you think is the situation here when it comes to whether or not these allies, or I guess former allies in Europe, could be turned around from the people you've spoken with in the UN and so forth?
Oh, I was also part of many events in Europe, like, and it was like kind of because of my position in terms of like Russian athletes in international sports. I was invited in some events, and I had spoken with some politicians from Germany, let's say, and from different countries. And I think even local politicians are really not happy with actions of government because, yeah, to be honest, like Europe was. I think they just now try to start to do something, but it's already late. Like, and it's they should start 4 years ago when full-scale war started, and now like let's say they don't. I think this like traditionally these biggest military companies, they're not able to keep up with how it was called by Rheinmetall CEO, like with housekeeping wives or something like that. Yeah. So I think now drone technologies is something new, and to be honest, like I think Europe is not ready for this kind of warfare right now, and they put them at risk because of that. So it's I think it's on their side, and they should make some changes in their politics, as I believe. Also, it's quite weird because Europe is so close, and still like we was in many events there, like in sport events, and we are going like 1,000 kilometers away on a room, and people asking, do you still have war in Ukraine or not? I mean, like we are in the same continent. It's still very close. How you
Who were the
can?
people? Out of curiosity, which country were those people from who were asking
No,
that
it
to
was
you?
some people from Austria, some people from Romania. Romania, like it's like we have a border together, and
Wow.
people like still like saying such a crap, and it's also showcasing that people living in some own bubbles, and again like it's events is not an athletes, yeah, it's people who is running federations or like part of this, I would say, some institutions. So it's not people who is 24 hours per day like just thinking about trainings. No, like it's people who is really doing some politics inside their countries. It also shows that at some point like Europe also media, like some media start to like try to isolate war in the media and not talk about it, and it feels like okay, it's finished, yeah, it's no war in Ukraine. But with that, like we don't have less scale of war, yeah, like we still have this crazy huge scale of war, and I think it's much bigger scale than any other war in the world right now. If you talk about, we can measure it, yeah, like victims per day or like loss in technique, like in everything, yeah. So we can measure it in some way. So definitely, war in Ukraine is like, yeah, it's huge. It's huge by its scale, but still, like it's not spoken a lot about it, even in Europe. So I think it's also what makes me like pretty sad at some points.
If you can, before going to Will, if you can summarize growing up as you are, you're 27, 28?
I'm 27 right now, yeah.
27. So growing up as you did, there were certain, let's say, cultural milieus that you've noticed as far as things that went on the internet. I don't know if you are a visitor of 4chan, for instance, or any of those particular
Yeah.
internet. Okay, so as far as the kind of culture that I think a lot of the people that unfortunately fell for the Russian trap, a lot of the culture that they were seeing growing up on the internet, after Gamergate, involved a lot of these, very, I'm not going to use the word liberal, but very like far left identitarian things that were the polar opposite of, I would say, what counts as a healthy nation of people that fight for something bigger than just hedonistic pleasure. It's like this Reddit brain mindset of just having this materialistic existence. And I think a lot of the Russian adjacent pundits use that opportunity to say, well, in Russia, we have this traditional Christianity and everybody's based in trad, and look at Europe, look at how it's degenerating all of this time. Families aren't together anymore, things of that nature. Did you also notice, just like going outside, going to places in Europe, that there may have been obviously not a truth as relating to Russia, but a truth as related to people's sense of priority? Obviously, say for Ukraine, which I think definitely understands what is at stake and what is worth fighting for. But as far as like these places in Europe, would you say that is true, that people have succumbed to this kind of cultural malaise, and that's why they're having this invasion of Muslim men, and they're they don't talk about it, they're fine with it, they don't really feel like doing anything to preserve, because maybe they don't see it in themselves that there is anything inside of themselves that's worth preserving and extending out to future generations. But I don't know, that's just been my read of the situation.
Yeah.
Culturally speaking, what has been your read, both like in Ukraine as well as when you were in Europe?
For me, like as a kid, like we had definitely like some changes, and since my childhood, we was like a brotherhood nations, and it was a narrative, like, and I felt okay with that. We have a lot of relatives, like I think each family in Ukraine has some relatives in Russia, and it was kind of a normal way of life. Then we have Yanukovych as a president. When Ukraine society decides that we want to be part of European Union. Then at some point, it was like Yanukovych administration, they decided that no, we will take another decision. Then we have a Maidan, and I think you already may knew a lot about Maidan and what happened next. Then we have occupation of Crimea, and then we have occupation of east of Ukraine. It was 13-14 winter, like, and we have occupation of Crimea, of Donbass, and still I think we was fooling that Russian people doesn't want to have this war. And we still was part of one media bubble. So I also watched some Russian YouTube shows. I watched some Russian publics. We used Russian social media. And I think it was like kind of our understanding was like Russian government is bad, but people in Russia doesn't want to have anything, any war. But then I think full-scale war, when it started, like it showed that we were like not right, and it's whole Russian society, like or majority, doesn't want to stop it. And we try to address Russian people, we try to address them, but it's quite hard. You have some unique examples when people really are standing against war. Of course, you have some military groups from Russia who is fighting on the side of Ukraine. And also, let's say, if we talk about some famous people, I think Kasparov is quite a good example, that because he is kind of look as a real opposition, and it was like constant position since 2014. But mainly, like it's people. Even we talk about Navalny and this movement, it's also it feels like they're not against war, but they're against Putin. So they're not against war, because also he is when he was alive, Alexei Navalny, he also told some pretty weird narratives as like Crimea is we should decide, but it's not. I'm not sure that Crimea is Ukrainian or something like that. It was also silly jokes about sandwich or things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a not real opposition, and it's also they try to blur it, like in the media, but it's another topic. But as we all grown up, like it definitely was a lot of changes, and for me, like as a person, like I also feel it that we was a brotherhood nation. Then we had like a believing that Russian people doesn't want this war, and then we have quite clear understanding that it's quite a national thing for them at this point. But we still have some hope that we also can free Russia from this fascism of Putin. If you talk abroad, like, and I think in Europe it was quite hard narrative that Putin is kind of like, strongest politician in the world. It was like in many private discussions, you have this like people talking about Putin as a kind of some god. And it was quite weird for me. Like I was in Germany, I'm talking with people and they saying, oh no, but Putin is huge. Like it's Putin.
The Russian bear.
Yeah, Russian bear, like he is riding, I don't know. Yeah, these things. Yeah, it sounds like a crazy, yeah, if you like think about it, but also how he had in charge in his country, and like for 20 years he's doesn't changed, and it's clear dictatorship, but people still sees him as a kind of like
Mm.
superior person, and I think it's not right. Like he's not superior, and what he's doing is not right in Ukraine. But they definitely had this narrative, and I still believe even now, like in some bubbles in Europe, like people still think that Putin is superior, even after this 4 years of full-scale war in Ukraine. When yeah, as you mentioned before, Russia can't really like move and like be really stuck on this, like I would say, front lines. Yeah, it's not moving a lot, and still people believe that Putin is some superior and Russian army is strongest in the world. And it's, for me, it's quite wild to think about. But definitely it was a lot of narratives which was spread in these societies. And yeah, Russia is still really like playing a long game. And as an again, like if we talk about like sport perspective, I see it in many ways. And Russian sport is like such a like huge instrument in propaganda, and for such a long time. And they have this like famous athletes in Russia who was like spreading the same narrative, and then suddenly this narrative became like a narrative which was spreaded by Putin when full-scale war started. They spread a lot of narratives about Donbass, about people being pressurized. Uh, I was so surprised that people believe that Russian language is like being pressed in Ukraine. Because to be honest, like when I was a kid in school, it was opposite. So it was not kind of, it was not how it's called, like trend. It was not a trend to speak Ukrainian. So it was kind of like a narrative that if you speak Ukrainian, then you are not kind of a modern person. So it's kind of things. Our culture was like pressed a lot, because to wear like vyshyvanka, it was some kind of a weird thing. Yeah, it's our national clothes. And also, to be honest, like what I see now, like in Europe also, like which is close to us, people don't really understand our culture. People don't understand that Ukraine has pretty big value, like and not only because of drones right now, but also because in our society we are very digitalized. So I was in New York like just a couple of weeks ago, and to be honest, like if you go just in like as a civil person, just going at the cafe, like at the restaurant, it's such a like better level of restaurants in Ukraine, like in average. It's such a like better service in restaurants. Cuisine is like such a like huge variety of cuisine, like what you can eat. Services wise, like yeah, so we have all the banks like in a few apps. You yeah, it's very modern like society. You have such a like amazing services, like as the taxi services. It works like much better than in US and than in New York, let's say. And yeah, it's definitely like we have some own value. We have amazing like businesses right now. And I think I still believe that Ukraine is an amazing country to invest in, because we have such amazing people, such a talented people. And also, I think what is also true, after full-scale war started, we had a lot of refugees like to the Europe, yeah, like and mainly like Germany, Poland, big European countries. And I believe Europe more satisfied with our refugees than with Syria
Oh,
refugees, let's say, if you compare. Because people literally
yeah.
like going to work. Yeah, so they're not try to, found some like a leak and just to get money from government and do nothing. But people really want to work. People want to develop. And now in Poland, if you go to Warsaw, you have like half of Warsaw is Ukrainian restaurants. So people open business. People invest in these countries, and people try to build something. So it's also, I think, a lot. It tells a lot about Ukraine, and I think Ukraine had pretty amazing value, and Ukrainian people had amazing value, like as a human beings. And I believe that it also was pressed, and in Europe people don't understand it. People still sees us as a third world country, and I think it's not right.
Fair enough. All right,
When it comes to
Lev, I need to
sir.
get going, bro. I
Oh,
apologize. Sorry.
Okay, so well. Before you get going, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about Iran
Yes.
and what exactly you see going forward right now with Trump and this no-kill list that we were discussing before the show started. So yeah, let me know what you think about that.
Okay, yeah. So the no-kill list. I mean, Trump, as we said at the beginning, Trump's a deal maker. He likes to make deals, and he wants to keep some people around to make deals with. right? Or at least like, so those people were off his, he didn't want to kill every single person in the regime because he wanted to keep open the possibility that he'd find the right people to make a negotiated agreement with. It's not clear that worked. I would be a little worried if the ceasefire expired without a deal, if I were those people who were showing up in Islamabad, because I think that protection might no longer exist. And we've seen what happened to most of the rest of the Iranian regime. So I'm not too worried about it. I think, Trump, again, has, from his perspective, I think, and honestly, from the American perspective, the Iranian regime is acting like the Black Knight in Monty Python. Like, you've been beaten very badly and you're still pretending that you have a real fight here. I had this whole debate on Piers Morgan, and I for a long time, I've thought people have overblown the Strait of Hormuz as this, effective means of defeating the United States, because we don't rely on the Strait of Hormuz for our oil. And in fact, we're the largest oil producing country in the world. So I think, Trump, the blockade's working well. I think in general, I think we're in a very good position. We're going to be able to get what we want. And if we don't, the Iranian regime is going to feel it more than we will. So it's really just a question of Trump holding his nerve. And I think he understands it as well as anybody. And I don't think he wants to lose here. So that's my assessment for the Iran war.
I hope you're right. Will, where can people find you and what do you got working on?
All right. You can find me at Will Chamberlain on X. And then I have two, sort of big projects I work on with the Article 3 project, which is domestic American legal affairs. You can follow, if you're an American, you can participate and help bug your senators, bug your representatives for various projects we think are important. Among them right now, we want to bully the House into expelling Eric Swalwell. We also want to bully the House into not voting for the Dignidad Act, which is an immigration bill. And then on the other hand, I'm also Vice President of External Affairs at the Edmund Burke Foundation, which puts on the National Conservatism Conferences. If you're interested in those, I think we will be hosting NatCon in Jerusalem, although date to TBD. We had a June date, but that's been postponed because the war obviously makes things a little trickier going to Israel. But you should expect to see conferences both in Jerusalem and I believe in Washington, D.C. towards the end of the year.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for coming in. And
Right.
Vlad, could you stick around for a little bit long? Like, how are you on time?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it was
cool.
nice to meet you. Yeah,
Nice to meet you,
Vlad.
Vlad.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Now, before we keep going, I wanted to
Sorry,
share.
can't hear you.
Yes, hello,
some
hello,
reason.
hello. Uh-oh, that's weird. Yeah, see what's going on there. But while you're figuring that out, I want to direct
Yeah,
everybody.
sorry, can't hear nothing.
No,
Some
okay.
problem.
Go into the settings. Try to reset your headphones. If it doesn't work, then yeah, I don't even see why I gotta say though if you're not
wait,
hearing
please.
me right now.
I
So
understand.
we'll wait. But while you're doing that, I'm going to shill the Patreon. So Matt Forney, this
Yeah, maybe I
Thursday.
will.
Yes.
Because I don't know.
Yes.
No sound.
Yes,
some
yes,
reason.
yes. Okay, so you're gonna restart there. And while we're waiting for Vlad to come back in, I want to share the show that I'm going to be doing this Thursday with Matt Forney. Here it is: the enemies of civilization fighting third worldism. And I did this little graphic here with Tucker Carlson dancing in his Chinese underwear, and he's also above over here having his head slightly melted, disintegrating very, very slowly, made out of clay. So that's going to be happening in the city. It's part of BTR NYC, and if you guys want to be there in person, become a $20 patron, and you're going to get the address for the New York City studio, and we are going to have a cheese plate. We're going to have drinks. And we have a very nice rooftop there. So if the weather's good, we're going to be hanging out and drinking up there. Or if not, we'll go to like a Japanese izakaya or whatever. But either way, I look forward to seeing you guys there. Matt Forney, this is going to be the first time I've had Matt on BTR. I know he hasn't been the biggest fan of the Indian people. Me personally, I disagree with him there when it comes to, on the individual level. If people aspire and are able to be a part of the United States, Western civilization, whatever you want to call it, I think that is absolutely fine, and that should be the requirement there. And I'll talk to him about that, see like where exactly he's at when it comes to who is or isn't qualified and on what basis. But we're also going to be talking about this whole third worldism thing, which to me it's been kind of a welcome surprise. I didn't really expect, being all this time online here, that there would be people who are starting to push back against the Russia narrative. is for a long time, it really felt like there wasn't really a lot of people that shared the same position of, liking Western civilization, liking, this mix of order and liberalism in the classic sense, and at the same time not really being a fan of Vladimir Putin and whatever it is that Russia was doing. And it's interesting. There was this tweet by what's his name, Nick Land, if I can find it down here, where Nick, he was on a show with Alexander Dugin not too long ago, and he was talking about what is this? Okay, he was talking about how people are being too mean to Mr. Alexander Dugin here. He's a smart guy, and his position of there being like a land power and a sea power should actually be considered. And I disagree with him there. I think that the Dugin, if he was talking about like a land power and a sea power in relation to Russia not being the way that it is and being more like kind of like the Austro-Hungarian Empire, that would be fine. But I'm not really seeing that. Here we go. I'm not.
Yeah,
Hey,
hello.
Vlad, we're back. I was
Yeah.
just putting up this. There is so much in my timeline right here that I'm having a hard time finding it. But it's from Nick Land, who I don't know if you follow Nick Land as far as the philosopher guy. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Not really, not really.
So Nick is like this right-leaning British philosopher who speaks a lot about tech accelerationism, and he was recently writing this tweet that was talking about not Vladimir Putin, that was talking about Alexander Dugin, and here, I found it right over here. So Dugin helps the here, I'm going to put it on the screen. Dugin helps the Anglosphere to understand itself. It is indeed at its best, and when true to itself, thalassocracy, Leviathan. So Leviathan being the biblical name of this creature, this giant creature that swims in the depths of the sea. So what this means is a seafaring power, kind of like you would think of the ancient Phoenicians as another example. So he sees the Western world, like the Atlantis world, as being a sea power. And he says we're here in forgetting that. In forgetting this, it culturally decays, talking about the sea power losing its way and its divine mission. Of course, it makes Behemoth mad. That's essential to the game. So Behemoth would be like the power of the land, that he would refer to, let's say, Russia and China, like these Eurasian countries, as being more of like these land-based powers. And he sees Ukraine as being kind of this element in the middle, which, if Russia has Ukraine, it would create like this balance of this multipolar order. And that's been a lot of the kind of stuff that was coming out with this guy. And so, I did a response tweet, which you can, kind of guess at what I'm alluding to here, where I'm talking about that the land power here, it's not going to be like a philosopher. It's going to be more like Jamal from the Ninth Ward rather than Tolstoy, if we're talking about what Russia represents. It's much more like this hood gangster that tries to get whatever it wants until it gets its nose punched in. That's at least the way that I see it. But what do you make of this whole Duginist philosophy here with the sea power and the land power and all that stuff?
No, for me it feels like a mushroom philosophy, more like a mushroom philosophy. He's definitely like a sick man, like, and his statements, and then he's like, it's just a weird thing to do. If you wear like a fancy suit on a person without education, he's still person without education. And, to cover up, like, I'm not sure that people who is defending Russian culture really like read some Russian books. Because I read some, like I read Tolstoy book, some books. He's also, I think even Tolstoy described Russians as idiots. Like he had this book, Idiot, and I read it.
No, that's Dostoevsky.
Dostoevsky, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no
But
problem.
I mean, like, it's a Russian classic, yeah, which they like praised as a like something amazing. But whole book was about how Russian people are greed, how Russian people are stupid, and how they're psycho. Like it's whole book about it, and they still praise it. And I think people didn't really read this literature. from Russia who is defending Russian culture. So I mean, like all this Dugin and all of that. I think it's more interesting to look on statistics. So I'm a physicist, yes. So I'm about more like numbers, because numbers shows us much more concrete, basic to discussion. It's a facts base, and it's interesting to see how many people in Russia like really, let's say, what percent of people had education. Does like 100% of Russians able to read at least, or like does 100% of Russian people who is like considered Russians, they speak Russian language? So it's more like a discussion what I want to have, like, because when we talk about some mythical creatures, I mean, like it's a wild thing if you have like, let's say, 10 or 15% of people who can't read in your country. So I think it's more like what discussion should be about. And I don't really consider Dugin as like some kind of like a brain or something like brain head. So for me, it's more like just some wild propagandist, mushroom philosophy, as I told you before. I think it's how I see him, and like I don't really want to read what he's writing. It's quite a wild thing to do.
I like the term mushroom philosopher. It reminds me of this program, which you were probably too young, but your parents may have told you about it. Right at the tail end of the USSR, there was a program that came out with this guy who had this theory that Lenin was actually a mushroom. And he tried to prove this, in this very rigorous scientific way. And the whole thing, it was supposed to be seen as serious by the USSR people that approved it and all that. Obviously, it wasn't. But I don't know if that's where you get like the mushroom philosopher from, or like.
Nah, to be honest, like it's a story from local one. Like we had an athlete, Russian athlete, who finished her career, and then somebody like from abroad, like athletes, I think it was from some foreign country. She sent me like her interview, and in the interview she was like saying at some point like, oh, yeah, I left to some country, and then I found out that mushrooms is my teachers, and, and I'm like, what? And it was like whole interview was like, yeah, so I eat mushroom and then I listen what world telling me and all of that stuff. So that's for me like mushroom philosophy, like, and that's what I see here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, mushrooms, I think they do have potential to open up certain gateways inside of the human being, perceiving certain things. But at the same time, people can also be influenced in a bad direction too. People open themselves up to things.
Yeah, definitely.
But
no, it's still narcotics, and like it's the same as opium at some point. So opium was also pretty helpful and post-war time, and the same like mushrooms is also being used in I believe in MMA, like even some like top athletes who is like earning a lot of money, like, and after career when they have some brain damages, mushroom is like they have some mushroom treatment when it would help your head to recover.
Yeah, neuroprotective qualities.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's another thing. Like when you use it as a treatment, but not as a not.
I mean,
not
it
as
was
a sense of life.
to be fair, just a slight pushback. I would say that a lot of our cultures originated, as shamanistic animist cultures, where something like mushroom use, it wasn't like entertainment. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to take these shrooms and then go to a concert, and it was supposed to be a very traditional, medicinal also, but like spiritually medicinal process for like people who lived in certain villages. This may be, by the way, where we got the visage of Santa Claus, or Ded Moroz, as we call them. The idea being that these reindeer were given these mushrooms to eat, the muhamor, the fly mushroom, like that red one with the white spots. And then it's going to sound kind of gross, but like the urine of the deer was drunk because the deer's digestive system filtered out the kind of thing that would make people throw up. And then by consuming it, you had all these otherworldly visions. But then the problem today is that I think one of the reasons why somebody like Dugin is so admired by the West is that we've become so materialistic, where people aren't really seeing there being any reason, like I said before, to get up in the morning, to build that great cathedral, to, take humanity to the stars or whatever. They don't see the point, and they think, oh, this is all just like some cosmic accident. I might as well just have my fun. And I think that's why they look at people like Alexander Dugin as a representative of this more primordial self. But again, like the kind of things that he's talking about, the problem is that he's connecting them with the absolute gangsterism of what is modern day Russia. And he doesn't want people to know that gangsterism exists. He wants people to think like, oh, there's these, wise spiritual shamans and rogues. And that's why I think a lot of people also get into the Russian Orthodoxy as well. I don't know, have you heard of the Orthobros by any chance?
But yeah, Russian churches, like in Ukraine, is a huge problem, and also because they are playing alongside with Russian propaganda, they part of Russian system. I think in Ukraine they also find out many facilities was like in charge. Many facilities were used to keep some guns for Russian invaders. So also I think Russian church, and if you talk about their main pope, it's
Kirill?
Kirill, yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
with the fancy watches and all that, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of also wild, but I mean, people in Russia still sees him as a main pope. I mean, as a I don't know.
And he was KGB. The guy worked for the KGB and still.
Yeah, but I
still
mean,
does.
he's talking about Bible, and at the same time he's saying, yeah, war is a good thing. And Russia, I'm supporting war in Russia. I mean, it's a wild thing. And again, it's also showcasing for me that Russia using every possible platform without any, I would say, nothing is out of their policy. Nothing is out of their it plays alongside with our direction as a country, as invaders, or it's not exist in Russia. I mean, it's kind of what we have in Russia. As that's what I see from Russian church.
Yeah.
That's what I see from Russian sports. Also, we had amazing discussion some time ago with Belarusian Solidarity Foundation. So it's a group of athletes who was refugee when they had election 2019-20 this year's in Belarus. They were they left as refugees from Belarus. They settled up in Europe, and I talked with him. I talked with them, and they also told me that it's not possible to be international athlete if you're not part of the regime, and you can't compete. I mean, you can't compete on international stage if you're not part of the regime, if you're not playing alongside with them. And many people was forced to even to change their I think point of view. They get some tortures, and then or they family members was kept out, and then they suddenly became supportive of Lukashenko, even if they were not supportive for him before. And you have these things, and I believe it's wild thing. It's really wild thing, and they're using every possible opportunity. If it's a church, if it's any things what you may think it's a saint, it's something who nobody touches, because if you have some morality, then it's not a discussion, because these people they don't have any morality. It's only about invading and put a narrative.
So you could see over here as an example of this morality that they want to show to the people. And look who is RTing RT, pardon the pun. Over here we got Dasha, holding.
He's talking about Nazism, it's.
Yeah. So again, this is the post that I was responding to before, where Anna and Dasha were calling Ukrainians Nazis since back around 2018. Make no mistake, nobody who is well-educated and from the former USSR like they are would utter such propaganda unless they work for the Kremlin. So this is, again, the soft power that I was referring to earlier. And I mentioned the Orthobros. Your response was talking about specifically the Russian Orthodox Church. You may not be aware of who the Orthobros are. So I just want to let you know what exactly that is. These are young people, American, Canadian, whatever, who have not just embraced Orthodoxy, Christian Orthodoxy, but specifically of the Russian variety, and made links to Russian propagandists through that. So we would have people like, for example, Jay Dyer, who is a very well-known guy talking about spiritual matters, talking about how aliens are actually demons. That's been a very popular one to talk about. I mean, you remember Tucker Carlson, he was allegedly handled by a demon earlier on. And again, this this kind of thing is very romantic. It's very romantic to a lot of these young, disillusioned people in the West who lived a pretty comfy life. But also, to be fair, they do notice that there is this, unlike in Ukraine, they notice maybe what you noticed when you were in New York City, that there is this degeneration that's slowly occurring. I mean, in New York City, you probably saw all of these beautiful townhouses and these beautiful spires that were made like in the 1920s and 30s. But then you look around and you see like the homeless, and you see like people who are, I'm sorry to say, and this is nothing to do with skin color, but it does have to do with culture. People who do come from a culture that is from the third world. And that is why I think there is this difference between what you were noticing with the migrants, refugees from Ukraine, and how well they're able to get on in places like Poland and the United States, etc. This is, by the way, probably one of the reasons why Trump brought in refugees from South Africa, white refugees from South Africa, because there is certain expectation as far as the kind of culture that like the South African farmers had back then, which right now, if you look at like before and after photos of certain places in South Africa, you notice complete degradation. Everything's falling apart. It looks like Mad Max, if you're familiar with that movie.
Yeah.
And people have a similar thing when they go to Japan in the West. When they're in Japan, they come back and they feel this sense of depression because of how good Japan was. Everything just worked, and everybody, was well behaved and all that. Maybe if they come to Ukraine, they'll also experience like a similar thing. But then the question is, other than, and this is like the real tragedy here, other than experiencing what you guys have been experiencing all these decades, how, and maybe with Israel it's a similar thing too, the kind of pressure that Israel's been on, how much do you think it's required, and it's a horrible thing to say obviously, but like how much do you think it's required to have this external force, this external pressure that unites people, that actually makes them want to better themselves and better their lives? And if the pressure's off all of a sudden, would this kind of degeneration be expected, like we're seeing in Europe, like we're seeing in New York City, and so on?
I like this, like it's not a meme, but I mean, like you may also see this photo, like this circle, and then we have a good life, bad times, like I mean, So I mean, like it's challenging, then challenging creates a good life, and it's kind of a circle, some kind of thing. This thing, I think you may find it like in internet. It's kind of popular stuff, but I think when you have like very comfortable life and you have a lot of distractions, and you have this new agenda, like you need to create some great big problem. As let's say like in quite some time ago, like in Germany, they decide that biggest problem in Germany is nuclear plants, and suddenly like it became a huge problem. Lack of them became a huge problem. But at back then, like when they create this problem, it was not a real problem. Power plants it's still, I think, pretty safest and greenest like energy as possible.
Especially if you use thorium, by the way.
Especially,
I heard that especially if you use thorium, that would be a lot safer as far as nuclear plants go.
No, but I mean, everybody coming back to Chernobyl and what's happened in Chernobyl, still it's a lot of questions if it was forced by someone or it was by mistake, or like what happened really because it was Soviet Union thing.
And by the way, they were having, according to my family, they were having festivals that were going on right by Chernobyl during this whole thing.
Yeah, because government tried to hide it, and that's why it became such a big tragedy. But also, what I try to refer is that like a lot of time passed by, and now you have small power plants. As let's say in France, they have small power plants, and you can build more and more power plants, and it's safest, greenest energy as you can find, and it's safe. Like it's not dangerous, and it's very cheap. I mean, you had such a like, it's not a problem. It's a good thing to do. And back then, when Merkel did it, like I think, as I believe, Merkel also had some physicist background, so she definitely understand it. But it was agenda of Green Party, and and I think they did it because they had a great time economically and on overall, like, and they have a great time, and people want to have some problem to solve, and then they decide to solve problem which does not exist. And now suddenly also it's showcasing again like these things that Russia play really long-term narratives and really long-term policies. It feels now that it was Russian plan, because now because of lack of energy, now like Europe is struggling, because also German industrial like things, they are struggling because now they have very expensive energy because of war in Ukraine and all of that, and they don't have backup plans, they don't have nuclear plans, and all of a sudden like it became a really big problem for Germany. But back then like it was not a problem, but good times creates these problems.
Good times create weak men create hard times create strong men create weak times, which is probably not where one should end it when talking about the cycle. That would be the one that I would start with, but that is the situation, coincidentally, which we happen to be in right now. But last question that I have, which I've been mulling it over in my head, when it comes to Russia versus Ukraine, it's pretty obvious, who the invaders are, and they're not people that are living amongst the Ukrainians themselves. During 2014, from what I understand, people were talking about here in the West how all these Ukrainian soldiers were murdering civilians, when, from what I understand, what was going on back then is you had marauders that were being sent by the Russian government into these areas of Crimea. And, it created a lot, and obviously Donbass and all that. So it created this perception where you have videos of Ukrainian soldiers fighting that could be used as propaganda. So that's what was going on in Ukraine. But now the real challenge is, let's say we have in the United States, as well as Europe, and I'd say even more so Europe, people who are completely incompatible, who do not want to be Europeans. They don't want to embrace European values. They have their own particular values. They have their own separate political system. And if they want to impose that political system, which they obviously do in many of these local districts, do you think that something of this nature will eventually blow up into a civil war type situation? I know this is like very far from Ukraine, but the reason why I bring it up is, if we were to have this kind of civil war within Europe, do you anticipate in the future, knock on wood, like a strong, prosperous Ukraine with the kind of know-how of fighting in, semi-urban warfare, where maybe they would be able to assist people in Europe, let's say, in that kind of a civil war type situation? Because I don't really see a lot of the Europeans themselves being able to defend themselves against what may be coming with like two different systems that are completely incompatible.
Oh, it's definitely for me, like it's not a question of, like I would say, my understanding. So yeah, it's really hard to answer. Definitely, if you talk about Ukraine, it was now our like country and like our soldiers and military like technologies are being like developed very fast. Ukraine really strong part is improvise. I think it's a weak part of Europe and very strong part of Ukraine. Yeah, so we're able to improvise, and I think Ukraine really able to deal with some things very quick. At the same time, price of that development is too high. Yeah, like we are losing thousands of people, and we have a huge tragedy in Ukraine. Like whole cities are being destroyed, and I mean, price of this development are too high, and definitely we need to stop this war as soon as possible. But definitely Ukraine now, as we see, like in the Middle East and in the countries are try to like have Ukraine on their side. Our expertise definitely now understands that these technologies are like, some things are too outdated right now. It's definitely like another generation of war. Like now tanks are not as valuable as they were like in the Second World War. And because now it could be destroyed with like a couple of drones, and it's kind of like million something cost technique being destroyed by few $100,000 drone. I mean, like it's not as valuable right now. It's not as effective. And definitely, I think Europe should adjust and also to be able to, I don't know, keep safe their own countries. But yeah, but again, like it's not really hard to judge, and I don't know like where like is it stands. Is it a real problem right now, or it not, or it is not a problem right now? I was in Europe right now, so I don't see like they have some tension in the streets. Let's say, yeah, people just enjoying life and people just doing like work, and I believe Europe also had some pretty strong sides, and
They have started deportations, from what I understand, of certain illegal migrants in parts of Europe.
yeah, I didn't investigate it. So again, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
No,
an
that's
athlete
fair.
in the first place. I'm an athlete, and also like a Ukrainian. I try to support my country, so I don't have expertise on immigration situation right now at this point in Europe. But from my like what I see like in this like Europe is in some places is pretty clean. So I would say pretty clean. I would say as a, like they don't have so much problems. Streets are clean. Yeah, like you if you just go by street, like it's clean, like it's a nice place to be. They don't have so many like I think they don't have homeless people, so it's another thing which is like kind of in some ways like it's much better place to be than let's say New York cities in some districts.
Yeah.
You don't have like smell of weed everywhere. I think for
Yeah.
me like it's really like wild thing, like you're going through the streets of New York and like you have a weed everywhere, like the smell, it's crazy. You have like kids who's going by the same venues, like, and you have this like weed smell. It's definitely not good for health, and it's not good. A lot of homeless people. We have it also in Ukraine in some places, but I mean in Europe, like it's much less homeless people. But also not everywhere. Like it depends on the city. Logistically wise, I would say like I was in Vienna like not so long time ago. Like amazing city. Like I really like some of the cities. Also mix of they really try to keep nature in the city, and it's also another thing what I really like about New York. Yeah, like you have a lot of green places.
Yeah.
You
Central
have like
Park.
yeah, Central Park, and you have like local Bryant Park, and it's a lot of great places to be like, and it's a lot of, but still like you have some problems, some issues. In some cities it's much better, like in terms of Vienna, like it's not that you have everywhere this like weed smell, like it's much better in this perspective. It's very clean. You have like also pretty good cuisine. Logistically wise, you have amazing underground. It's clean underground. It's like
Well,
safe
I don't know about
underground.
that. I mean, with the New York City subway, I've seen a
No,
lot
Vienna.
cleaner.
Yeah,
Oh,
In
Vienna.
Vienna,
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
So if you
Yes, of
compare,
course.
yeah,
Yes.
it's just in comparison. So you have some good things in Europe. It's not that like Europe is crushed and it's devastating. No, Europe is good, but I mean like they have some another problems.
Well, also,
Uh,
how old are a lot of the Europeans? That's the other thing to keep focus here. The average age of the native Europeans. And if we're looking at this maybe like 30 years from now, 40 years from now, hopefully nothing will happen. But there is still this feeling in the air of, if they're so irresponsible when it comes to, this war that's going on, if they're, not willing to help the United States out either, that they are scared, that they're scared of something that is within Europe right now. I don't think that makes for the strong men. So eventually, people who are so relaxed and who have all these beautiful, wonderful things, like you were talking about, these transportation systems and all that, and I completely agree. I just don't know, like the people themselves, how long they'll be able to last until their, let's say, tolerance is taken advantage of to such a degree that it will create a lot of bad things over time. So, in more of the abstract sense, I think people that do let loose eventually will start to degenerate. And when that happens, how again I would relate this to the kind of things that you've been observing is that the strong people who are in Ukraine, they can serve as a guiding light to people who are going to be experiencing these problems down the road of having, let go of the responsibility in life.
no, it's a good questions, and I hope that we will not need to answer to them. But definitely now we have another thing in our mind. Now we have a full-scale war in Ukraine, and I think it's for us like it's thing to concentrate on. It's definitely early to say that Ukraine need to solve some inner European problems.
Yeah, it's already solving
Another,
the Middle
uh,
Eastern problems, to be fair, the Iranian,
yeah, but I mean, yeah, but yeah, it's it's also it's called some controversial in Ukraine, but I think it's a good thing that Ukraine tried to be like a valuable partner for world society, because now we have also like this narrative in Europe, and it was also a narrative of Orban, yes, that Ukraine shouldn't be part of European Union by some reason. But to be honest, like I think Ukraine very valuable to European Union, like, and it's not other way around, and it's now at this point after 4 years of full-scale war. I think Ukraine is not less valuable to Europe than Europe to Ukraine, because Ukraine had a lot of expertise. Again, digitalization, like in some countries, like in Europe, like it's terrible situation. Like it's so outdated, and like it is so much bureaucracy. It should be more simplified. Another thing that Ukraine had a lot of expertise in grown business, like business grown, like small business, like cafe, restaurants, service wise. Again, I told about it earlier. Yes, so now a lot of restaurants being opened in Poland, in all over the Europe, even in US. Like you had the great Ukrainian restaurants, but not as in so many like numbers. But still, it's a great places to be.
And education as well, because you were talking about the young kids.
Education is another. It's a very interesting topic, and here is a topic when I want to like come and try to support Ukraine. It's mine, like I would say, will be main focus of our charity foundation. Education is very strong till 11th grade, so till university. In Ukraine is like 11th grade system, and 11th grade, like I've been in touch with some professor of mathematics, like in Vienna. I've been in touch with some great science foundation in US. And to be honest, like our kids are like very talented. They winning some medals in the international Olympiads in science. Our educational system is like till the school system is very good, like because it's accessible. You can assess it. Like it's not of course the same in all the facilities, because you have some schools which are better performing, some schools are worse. But then we have a huge problem with universities. If we talk, I'm a guy who was raised in University of Physics, like it was physics facility, faculty of physics, and for us was problem lack of practical part. Yeah, so you don't have what you can do with hands, like because it's like no finance for that, or for some other reasons. But I think it's still problems that system is a little bit too Soviet Union. Yeah, so system is old. At the same time, like school system is pretty good, like, and I would say it's really nice. But university system is a little bit failing, and I also would like to help with that, because in my like faculty, like many people now abroad, like and from this faculty, and not because of mobilization, they left before full-scale war started, because they had more opportunity to grow up abroad in science. Yeah, they have better institutions, they have better labs. And all of a sudden, like we have this huge brain drain from Ukraine. It's not that they're being lost from Ukraine, like they're not being lost from science. Yeah, so that's a reason why they left Ukraine, to be in science, to be part of a scientific world. And I believe that science, like, and especially if we talk about mathematics, physics, astronomy, like cybernetics right now, and radiophysics, it's so important right now, like if in terms of like evolution, in terms of development. And scientists is like it's very important people in society, like, and it's always a little bit underestimated. They being underestimated. And of course I want to support my country. I want to support Ukrainian science, because I believe that we have amazing potential. As you see, like even now with drone technologies, yeah, it's people who are standing behind these technologies. And if we can support Ukrainian science, maybe we can do it even stronger. We can do, we can create something much more valuable and stronger in Ukraine, and not be, I would say, only hope for somebody from abroad, like, to support us, yeah, and just try to, like, we need to create something in Ukraine, and definitely it's been created already, but we need to create more, and we need to create it in a more efficient way, in more powerful way. So I believe that way to go. But education overall, if we talk about it, it's very strong, and in average Ukrainians, I think, are smart enough.
Well, I mean, again, the fact that you are an athlete and at the same time also a brainiac, that's a very good sign of what is to come in the future. Like I am very hopeful because in a way it is kind of like that ancient Greek ideal, right? You had people there at the Agora in ancient Greece who were both athletic. They concentrated on the sports as well as having a good head on their shoulders. And you cannot neglect the body and only focus on the mind, and vice versa. So I think both of those things are a recipe for success. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to hopefully having this war end, but end in such a way that Russia is going to be completely powerless to ever have another one again. That's what I'm going to be
Yeah,
keeping
we all
my
hope for that.
yes. And in the meantime, though, I definitely want to have the wonderful people who are watching this. By the way, make sure to smash that subscribe button, smash that like button, and click the bell. Bell is very important for the growth of this channel. And also, patreon.com/break the rules. Become a patron today. I want to show on the screen right now, 1 second, one more thing which you missed while you were away. But this is a event that I'm going to be having on Thursday with this gentleman named Matt Ford, and you could see him over here in the picture. And with AI, I made this dancing Tucker Carlson over here. I don't want to risk it with the music right now, but it's from. Are you familiar with Sonic the Hedgehog video games? No,
I don't
you never
think
played
so.
those back in the day.
How
right,
again? Can you repeat it?
Sonic the Hedgehog. It's like this blue hedgehog. He runs really,
No.
really fast. No, okay, that's probably for the best. But anyway, there was this game called Sonic CD, which came out in like 1992, I believe. And this was like a real auteur project, meaning that the creator of Sonic, Naoto Oshima, this Japanese gentleman,
Yeah.
he was in charge of pretty much everything. He made sure that the music was up to the level that he demanded, as well as the design. It was not done by committee based. Like it was like one person's vision. And he was very much influenced by the dance club underground movements that were going on in London at the time, like in the early 90s, and a lot of the music from there. And so the lyrics here, work that sucker to death. Come on now, work this sucker to death. And anyway, that's what Tucker's dancing to. Unfortunately, the studio in America, Sega of America, completely redid the musical tracks because they thought, oh, who would be interested in this club music? This was back in the early 90s. Little did they know that it actually ended up becoming quite popular afterwards. But anyway, that's just like a short thing. But anyway, if you guys want to support the show, patreon.com/break the rules, you're going to be able to see the show there. And if you become $20 subscribers to Break the Rules, $20 plus, I would say, you get to, if you're in the New York City area, come in the studio audience, join us. We're going to have a charcuterie plate, the cheese plate. We're going to have drinks, free drinks, glug, glug, glug. And we're going to be going up to the rooftop as well if the weather's going to be nice, or going to like some Japanese izakaya for the after party. So anyway, this is happening this Thursday. So if you guys want to get on that, I just wanted to share that with everybody. But now, Vlad, I would love to find out more about your charity, what people can do to support what you're doing.
No, for now, like I think just follow if it's possible for you, like just to follow my X page. Instagram page, I think it's pretty easy to find. Like, you see my family name and just to type it up like in every social media, like, and you can easily find me. Now at this point, like we also try to a little bit scale up work of our foundation. So now like we try to reopen our website. We are like rebuilding it a little bit. Again, like I don't want to make like things, without like we try to build it in a civil way, like not barbarian way, like fast way, and then with some sneaky way. So we try to, find out like better way to also run this foundation. It's another thing. It's local one, but it's not it's not website yet.
And what about this over here, the petition that you have in your bio?
No, it's for Ukrainians. So we talked already in this time about how Russia tried to put some people inside of the system. I think it was in Europe, but the same goes in Ukraine. And even now, like in the time full-scale war, we have a lot of pro-Russian people inside of Ukraine, inside of Rada, inside of sport field. And one of them, it's a legendary athlete, Bubka, Sergei Bubka. He was a pole vaulter.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had business in Russia, family business in Russia. He is one of the co-owners, and also he is running now one of the organizations which allowed Russian to use their flags and like all of that narratives. And yeah, it's petition to and he still had some government order like as a hero of Ukraine from 2000s, and I believe he's not a person who should be titled as that. And it's petition just to remove this order from him, because it's kind of also at the same time when we have like full-scale war, we also need to make our like inner life more cleaner, I would say, and we should clean it from Russian propaganda, and it's goal of this petition. But overall about foundation, so we already started some work. We already gave since this disqualification happened. We gave one generator, it's around $20,000 to one of the facilities in Cherkasy. It's very nice city. It's also a very interesting city because it's very historical, but at the same time, like how it was built is very square-wise, you know, like as in New York, like you have squares.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, and one of them, so one of the facilities is the biggest sport facilities in in Cherkasy. They also had the problems with electricity, so we provide them with generator. So now they're able to do competitions, to do trainings in a normal, proper way. Also, later, now we have amazing project, and we already had some money in our foundation, and we will try to support families of people who was pictured on my helmet. And we have already some requests, and we will start to do these projects. It's very amazing, and the requests are amazing. So first will be done already in 12 days, no, 13 days, or 2 weeks, let's say. It will be charity race, annual race, cycling race, and we will donate some cycling bikes to one of the cycling schools. It was a request from the family, so things like that. Also, we will do.
You have the helmet, by the way, for those who are listening.
So we already collected requests even from people who was pictured on this side. This guy was second guy, like if you and lower, one lower. This guy. So we already also had some requests from his family. He was wrestler, and they also have some wrestling school, so they need some clothes, some things. So we will proceed with this project, and of course, educational project, science project. So now we already, when I was in US, we already collect $7,000. It was like a side quest for us to collect some money for our project with Razum for Ukraine. It's a US organization which is supporting Ukraine, one of the biggest organizations which supports Ukraine. We will try to support our science project called Light for Science. We want to put solar panels for this lyceum, which I finished. It's very strong lyceum. We have amazing kids from this lyceum. They're winning these Olympiads, science Olympiads, international ones. And they also had some lack of electricity, so we want to provide them with solar panels. It's also a school with dormitory, like this where you live.
Dormitory.
And they have also kitchen, so they need some tools to cook food, more efficient ones. And also they need some gym renovation. So it's cover like closest project in how to support now education, and it's kind of education science project, because these young kids, despite their age like 15, 16 years old, they're already scientists, or they will be a scientist, because when you part of international Olympiads, you're already like quite a smart head. I mean, and their future is definitely in science or in some kind of big company as a Meta, or like, you know, they're like doing some great innovations. So we want to support this school, then we want to support a couple of similar schools all around Ukraine, and then we also want to support faculties of physics. So like it's our closest project what we will do. But for now, like just follow my page, and it will be all the updates about our project and also about what we already done. because I think for me, like, it's also always important to keep it transparent as possible. I believe that if you run some organization, if you run some business, or like transparency is the key. Yeah, like you need to be honest with people who supporting you, with your
Yes.
clients if it's business. And I mean, like for us, it's what it took so long time. We try to make system as transparent as possible, simplified as possible. The people, if they want to support us, they understand where money goes, how we let's say show them, yeah, like everything, so they have this all the information. So it's not
Mm.
some like sticky tricky ways that you don't know where money goes, and then you suddenly have this like scandals at all, they stole this money. But no, like we try to do it as transparent as possible, so we don't rush with that, and we don't ask money if we don't need them, like for the time. So but
Mhm.
at this point, how you can support us is just to follow my page, and then it will be all the updates.
Excellent. Now, one thing before we go, which I was almost forgetting to mention this, the polar opposite, I'd say, of what you guys are doing when it comes to the Olympics. There is something that I read about what was going on in Russia with the Olympic women there, where St. Petersburg has this private clinic called Sogaz, and it's linked to Yuri Kovalchuk's business empire, who is a close ally of Putin's. And it's linked to structures associated with Marina Vorontsova, who is Putin's daughter. And the clients of this clinic include Russian political elite people, security officials, senior bureaucrats. So what they do is they have these young Olympic women be used like like prostitutes for these wealthy Russian people, and they also check for virginity as well, and that's like for like a special occasion, if you will. So have you known about this clinic, like what was going on there in Russia?
No, to be honest, no, but I'm not surprised. Like at the same time, like it's kind of things what dictatorship playing with, and yeah, it's inhuman. Like again, like we're coming back to this point when I told you, like it's no morality. You shouldn't try to found morality of these people. They're using church, they use religion to keep going with the war. They use young kids to treat themselves like, and it's a wild thing if you think about it. Like it's a wild, yeah. How people can have some joy from that, like it's wild thing to think like even if you think about it, but people really like doing that, and you may see a lot of investigations and a lot of proofs, and yeah, it's terrible what I can say, but it's not also new. So you may see that many Russian high officials, they have wives as a, like figure skaters, yeah, like former figure
Yeah.
skaters, and figure skating is a young sport, so they start to do the sport in such a young age, and definitely they became like close when they were kids, and then they became their wives, and all of that sudden, like they have these couples, and when you have one figure skater and one politician, I think it comes to Nafka, like, and all of that thing. And I also I believe that these people who is in charge in this sport, like gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, figure skating, and if you have some high influence people in Russia in this sport, they also working as a pimps, like they selling these kids and all of that. That's how they also get this money, because it's very rich sport in Russia. They're very influenced, and I believe that's the way how they became influenced, how they get this influence. So it's a wild place, to be honest. Like, and yeah, I'm not surprised, and I really feel sorry for these kids who like from the childhood being brainwashed, and then they're being used as prostitutes, and it's like a broken people for whole life. Like it's crazy to understand what they're going through, but I mean it's Russia.
It's Russia. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the situation, and I'm very happy that Ukraine has been taking all of that corruption out of itself. Because, it used to be in the Soviet Union, and just like Poland was able to take a lot of that stuff off, Poland used to be considered one of the most corrupt, if not the corrupt place in Eastern Europe for quite a while. So, people, I hope, that are listening to this that are skeptical, I hope that you guys can remember Poland and the situation that was going on with Poland, where it is now. If you're thinking about, oh, Ukraine is so corrupt and all that, because that is the mindset that a lot of the people who are skeptical have. And again, like we have to take a look at the teleology here. What are people after? What are the goals? What are the ambitions of the people? And like all the great things you're talking about right now with these various science and math programs, this is very important, I think, for the future of the culture. And the only thing we can do right now is to try our
I
best
believe
to, yeah.
also like it's another thing that you don't have such a lot of corruptional scandal in Russia, let's say, yeah, from Russia. And in Ukraine, it's also for me like always since beginning of full-scale war, it was pretty clear that Ukraine really like value democracy. That's why we don't have like internet cut it out from us, as
Mhm.
it happened
Yeah.
in Iran. Yeah, now Iran like 45,000 people was killed. Internet was cut it out, and like you don't have even like you can't
Yeah.
read the stories about them. Like it's crazy. They
And
try
that's why
to
you have
hide.
corruption. That's why you have corruption
Yeah,
scandals, right? Because
yeah.
if you don't have the corruption scandals, then what's being
Yeah,
hidden there. Yeah.
yeah. The same goes in Russia. Yeah, now they have like social media, like from Instagram being banned, and you can use it just through the VPN. So
Hmm.
it's again like it's already a huge percent of people like, can't go online in social media, and the same goes like media is being pressed. You cannot like really like some. You don't have access to everything, and then you don't have such a like. And I think in China is also not a lot of corruptional scandals. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I think statistically it's couldn't be true
Yeah.
because like you have such a huge amount of people. You don't have like yeah, so it's definitely it's there, but I mean it's hidden. And I think it's very valuable thing about Ukraine that Ukraine strive to show this transparency. It strive
Yeah.
to allow. We have some scandals, and definitely it's a lot, and we need to work on that. It's not, but now I think it's not. First of all, not number one priority because we have like full scale war, and it's much worse than any corruptional scandal. At the same time, we not try to hide it. Yeah, so it's being showcased, and people can post it. People not being go to the prison because they post some scandals. People can go on a protest when you remember like when we have some disagreement in society regarding some law, like people go on a protest in the time of full scale war. Like it's such a I think it's a really like if we're talking about free world, that's amazing example of free world when people able to go on a protest in time for a full scale war. I think it's one of the unprecedented things in the free world, and it also shows that Ukraine definitely in the future will be a country without corruption, or let's say with very small percent of corruption, because you
Hmm.
cannot have country without corruption at all,
Of course.
but definitely it will be a country with very small percent of corruption. And Ukraine will be there, like, and I really believe in Ukrainian people. And since our work of our charity foundation, I experienced these private discussions with people who experienced war, who lost their houses, who lost like their family members, and it's still people are so inspired and so strong inside that definitely it motivates us to work more and more to build a much better country as we were, and like to try to be as yeah and as best human being as possible. So I believe that Ukraine will have a bright future, and Ukraine will definitely will be amazing country to visit. So I also encourage everyone who is not afraid of Russian shellings to also visit Ukraine and experience itself, because it's sometimes you can watch Ukraine from the stories, but I mean, if you experience it yourself, if you go here, like, and you visit some restaurants, you speak with people, it's much different experience and it's much better experience.
I hope that Trump, maybe at the behest of Marco Rubio, can go to Ukraine in the future. You never know. You never know how it'll work out. But I once again, Vlad, I really appreciate all the amazing work that you are doing and your team is doing, as well as the armed forces of Ukraine, and we will keep supporting it. I know this channel's going through a bit of a transition right now because originally in BTR, when we had a lot of people who were, more on the reactionary end, because like I said before, a lot of people were rebelling against the sad state of the culture that they were seeing. And unfortunately, a lot of those people were hooked in by the Duginist propagandists to the point that they don't really appreciate what's going on right now, and some of them go as far as to support Russia even. And I think that right now there is an exodus of those people from the channel, and this is why for the people who are watching right now, who are let's say on X, because there is also an X video that is going on at the same time as this one. If you guys are watching this on X and you want to support what BTR is doing, where I bring all these people together from all of these different facets of life, some of the smartest, intellectual, philosophical people come on the show, and people who are also from more of the reactionary end as well. As like Matt Forney, for instance, he's going to be coming in on Thursday, as I mentioned, for the Patreon episode, which is later going to be edited for YouTube. But either way, if you guys want to support the show, go to YouTube. Very easy. There is a post that I made right below the Twitter video. If you go there, click the link, it goes to YouTube. Go to YouTube, subscribe to YouTube right now. Leave a comment, click the bell. All of that is very, very important for the growth of the channel. And also Discord. For anybody who uses that, here is the Discord link, the official BTR Discord. So there it is. And with that, Vlad, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I would love to meet up in person next time you're going to be in New York, as well as, do another show. So keep doing the work you're doing. Thank you so much. And also, don't close this window immediately after we're done, because it's a StreamYard, and I want to make sure it's like all loaded in. But anyway.
Okay.
Vlad, thank you so much. And any last words you want to give the people before we go?
No, it's to be honest, like we talk a lot already, like almost 2 hours, and keep watching what's going on in Ukraine. It's important thing, and keep stand with Ukraine. It's important to keep free world and to stand for the free world. And thank you for the invitation. And see you hopefully in person soon.
Absolutely. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.